Hi guys, and welcome to my take on this YouTube artist collective theme, which is magical characters. Of course, this one was right up my alley. It has the spark to do a lot of research and to learn more about mythology and characters in mythology and other cultures, and I love being able to do that kind of research because it really does spark a lot of ideas and inspiration for me. And everything that I'm researching, even if I don't end up putting it into the piece that I'm researching it for, it all gets put into my creative bank where I can draw from that as I'm working on other pieces in the future. So it feels really great to be able to just fill up on this really exciting, inspirational ideas. And this original painting is available at my shop. There will also be prints of him available as well, so there is a link right down in the description so you can go check that out. But let's just jump right in. So this piece is actually the second take that I have for this YouTube artist collective theme. I started another one. I still love that idea. I'm still currently working on it, and I did actually show the digital sketch and the digital color comp of it about a month ago, and it was just very complex, which is something I want to do, but in the end I procrastinated actually starting the oil painting process so that I did not have enough time to be able to finish it to the degree that I wanted it to be. So I decided to go back to the drawing board and think of an idea that I found just as inspirational and exciting, but would be simpler and smaller so I could execute that same amount of time, only I could make it into a piece that just turned out a lot better and I wouldn't be as stressed out about it. So I went back and I decided I wanted to do a portrait of Hades, the Greek god of the underworld. And immediately when I started thinking about this, I actually had the idea of having, it's called a chaplet, or that's one of the words that it can be called, but that laurel wreath, headdress, crown that's often depicted and worn in Greek times. I wanted to actually have something that had a similar shape to that, but it was actually made of like little lava tendrils that's floating around his head to symbolize the underworld, and that there would be magma there. But that is something that was just like the spark of inspiration for this piece. Or once I thought of that, it kind of gave me a rock to start forming this portrait around. And I talk about this a lot, but I think it's really important, at least for me, to be able to come up with a little detail or something like this that just makes the whole piece. It makes it exciting and interesting, and it influences other decisions for the piece. And for this, it was perfect because it's a very simple concept. It's just a head, it's just a portrait, but being able to have this detail like that, it does help feed into other ideas so that I can figure out, okay, well, if I'm going to have this kind of a lava effect, how can I tie it into other details that can make this piece stand out? And that's where I started drawing ideas for how I was actually going to end up painting his eyes, and also he's going to have lava tears. And yeah, it was just something that felt really exciting right as I thought of it, and that almost never happens. I usually have to work on a piece for a really long time, sketching it and thinking about it before something clicks and it makes sense and it works. So that was a huge relief, where I was already feeling like I was starting a little bit too late, where it just I felt really connected and excited with this idea pretty early on. So after finishing this piece, an idea hit me on something that I can do to improve my oil painting and my process. And I think this is something that I can really bring into all of my other work, including my watercolors. But it's something that I'm really struggling with right now with oil paintings. And that's where when I paint the skin and other items as well, but mostly the skin, I realize once I really get into blending it and smoothing out transitions that it ends up pretty even and mid-tone. There's not a lot of really dark darks, and there's not a lot of light lights. So there's not a lot of variation within the values to give it more form. And I really want to be able to achieve something that has a lot more three-dimensionality to it. And that's one of the beauties of using oil paints, is that I can really chisel away at it. I can make things lighter and I can make things darker. And when I'm working on it, I definitely struggle with knowing the paints, for one, which ones will actually blend well and which ones will get the level of depth and darkness that I want, and also how to not overblend. But I also think that one thing that I'm going to try doing in the future is I'm going to actually, as I'm working on it, take pictures of it and then take it down to grayscale in Photoshop to see exactly where it's at that moment, because sometimes it's just hard to be able to see the actual values the way they really are. We have a lot of perceptions that are tied with value and color, so when you're looking at color and value, sometimes it can really cloud what it actually is. And I know that I struggle with this, so I think that this is going to really help me to be able to see how flat things are as I'm working on it. That way I can really just knock up those darknesses, the shadows, there we go. Make the shadows really dark and rich and make the highlights lighter and brighter. I also think that probably something that's contributing to this is that I really want to be able to paint oil paints in a way that has a lot of layers, very similar to how I do watercolors, where you can glaze it and you can build them up, these translucent layers. I think it looks really beautiful when it's well done in oils, and it gives it that same level of depth. But I still have struggled with managing my time in a way that allows me to have enough time on a piece to actually get in there and add lots of layers at the end. And that's really kind of a balancing act of prioritizing my time, but also prioritizing how long I need to let myself work on it before I decide to move on, because I am kind of trained myself to just really finish a piece and move on and do a new one and go on to the new idea. So yes, I think I need to make sure that I'm starting things earlier for reels, and also getting more done in the first few layers than I have been, because I think that I've been not quite getting as much as I'd like done, so then I have to get more done in those layers rather than being able to do light building layers. I don't know. Those are just things that I've been realizing as I'm working with oils, that those are things that I really would like to improve on, and I have a few ideas on how to do that. And I think painting his eyes were my absolute favorite part of this painting. And it's not because I love painting eyes, which I do, but it's because this one, I was really struggling with liking his eyes and knowing how to paint them in oils in a way that I was wanting them to look. And they end up going through quite a transition, a few different steps along the way to finally get where I'm really happy with them. But at first, so they were just sketched in and drawn, they just looked really cartoony, I guess, or really stylized. And I love a certain style in my work, and I love being able to have things look a little bit more animated in a way, but they just weren't matching with the kind of personality that I wanted him to have. So for all that time while I'm working on him and I couldn't get to his eyes yet, I left the eyes for the very end, or the second very end, I think. But I had to look at them like that, and it was kind of tainting my opinion on how his whole face ended up looking. And eventually I started working on his eyes, where I gave him these red pupils, and then I painted the whites of his eyes, and I was okay. I was happy with the left one, and then I painted the right one, and I realized that he was kind of looking in a very far off direction. You can see where they're actually, like, the gaze is hitting, so it doesn't feel like he's looking at the viewer, which is what I wanted. It looks like he's really spaced out, because one eye, the left one, is looking, and this is actually a great tip if you want to make sure that the eyes are aligned to look like they're looking at the right thing together, is that you cover one of the eyes and make sure it's looking at you, or whatever you want, or whatever direction you want it to be looking at. And then you cover the other eye and make sure that that independently looks like it's looking in that direction. So I did that. The left one looked like it was looking at me, and the right one looked like it was looking in a far off direction. So I painted those, and then I got them there, and then I realized they just weren't aligned correctly. And I actually went in with I think it is Gamsol. It's my paint thinner that I use. I dipped a clean brush in it and just started doing like a scooping motion to get the paint off of the right eye, which is a great way to remove wet paint. And I did remove it mostly, but there was still kind of this residue stain of that red color, and then the kind of yellowy white of his eye that was still there, and it was blended off, and it was really soft. And that's when it hit me that that's really what I wanted to do with his eye. It was actually a complete accident. I didn't want it to look as sharp and rigid as the one on the left did, or both of them, I guess, at the beginning. I wanted it to look really hazy and dreamy, and that was a quality that I wanted. I just wasn't sure how to accomplish it. I hadn't figured it out yet. And seeing that where I could just wipe it off and clean it up, and it actually had the base of what I wanted it to look like, was really exciting. So I went back over to the other eye and I scooped it up and scraped it and cleaned it. And then that's when I just did this really soft blend of centering the red where I wanted his iris to be, and then blending it into the white of his eye. And then I created this like white ring highlight around where his iris actually would be. And it was all built up off of very soft blends. And then I have a few little strokes that are just sharp white that are like the lines in your iris. And I was just so relieved with that, because it was kind of weighing on me from the very beginning of this piece, where I was liking a lot of parts of this portrait, but his eyes just didn't look like they were going to work in a way that I would be happy with. And when you're painting a portrait, the eyes are usually one of the most important parts. And it was very rewarding to get to that point through a very happy accident where it ended up turning out to be a very learning and exciting experimental moment for me, where I could figure out how I wanted to achieve this look. So yeah, I was happy with that. I was really enjoying the process of painting his eyeballs. And like I mentioned, the original painting of Hades is available at my shop. I also have prints of him as well if you'd like a more affordable option. There's a link right at the very top of the description down below, but I also have a link to my Patreon, which I want to give a huge thank you to all of my patrons over on Patreon. You guys all help me to be able to keep making artwork and making videos here, so thank you guys so much. But that's about it for today. I will be back next week with more videos, more artwork, so thank you guys so much, and I'll see you then.